Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Loreweek. Sorry about being late. I am actually still working on something, and I'm actually going to keep working on something for a bit because I have it in progress and I don't want to lose my place on it. But I figured I'd at least hit start so you would know I'm here, and we could talk about other things while doing so. I don't have much. Alright, I need to update. God dang it. Yeah, let's just get rid of that. There we go. So the first thing I want to talk about, as usual, we have show news right at the beginning. For those of you not aware, the Floodgates Voting is in fact open right now. If you are someone who supports the show through Patreon, you already know this, because you've already seen the post over on Patreon. There's a link to the vote there. If you are someone who supports the show who is not on Patreon, ask me, and a link shall be sent to you. In private, obviously, because private vote, because duh. As we were discussing the other day, foreign citizens do not have the right to vote on the thing. Is this 11? Where am I at? Where am I at? That's 3, so that's 2. So that's 1. So is that 11? Okay, there it is. Oh my god. I have spent the last hour and a half designing the bridge of the Enterprise, specifically TNG's Enterprise. I finished the bridge of the NX-01. I was actually pretty happy with it. But you know how it is. One moment. Looks like 4 frames is good. So that means... Oh, thank God. I mean, I could slow it down even more. Maybe to, say, 8 frames.
The adventure wasn't over in 10 minutes.
Yeah, I might try 8 frames out just to see what it looks like. But, with that, we can say that the TNG bridge is done. Oh my god, that was a monstrous nightmare to work on, let me tell you what. I can't even explain it without actually going into detail, and I'd rather not. So all you need to know is... Enterprise and Enterprise D's bridges are done. Thank God. Now, I need to come up with some episode of Enterprise where they could have solved a problem in 10 seconds if they just used the transporters, because I just can't think of one. And everyone in my Discord is worthless! I mean, not helpful on the matter. So if anybody can think of an example of an episode of Enterprise where they could have solved the dilemma of the week in 10 seconds if they just used the transporter, feel free to let me know. Floodgates Voting is open. I want to talk about the Floodgates Voting briefly to kind of explain how this works and how this goes. First, I'm going to get a donation from Shekor. Thank you, Shekor, very, very much. As always, I will put that towards LTTP. So, the way the voting works is that you'll get a link, there'll be a thing where you can add however many movies you care about, and you then order them in your order of preference. Now that is it, but I wanted to add one other thing here. Because of the nature of how the system works, we are trying to remove strategic voting from the equation. In fact, if you strategically vote, then you are basically invalidating the very purpose of how this vote functions. And I just realized the music's at full volume, for which I apologize. There you go. Sorry, because I had it playing while I was working. So don't strategically vote. What's strategically voting? I'll give you 2 very obvious and normal examples of what strategic voting are. Let's say that you're sitting down and you have to decide which fast food restaurant is your favorite. And of these fast food restaurants, you know that everybody loves In-N-Out Burger. So you look at the voting list and you say, well, I'm not going to vote for In-N-Out Burger because everyone else is going to. It's the obvious choice. Even though it is your personal favorite and your pick, you're going to not vote for it because you think everyone else is going to vote for it. That's strategic voting. Let's use the flip side of that. Let's say your favorite fast food restaurant is something really esoteric that nobody likes, like Der Wiener Schnitzel, for example. And let's say that you look at that and you're like, well, nobody's going to vote for Der Wiener Schnitzel. Like, that's pointless. If there's no reason to throw my vote away on that, so I'm not going to vote for that. So you vote for something else, which isn't your actual pick. That's strategic voting. So don't do that. Don't do that. Vote for your pick. You can vote for 1 or 40 or however many things it is. You can pick as many as you want. The minimum is 1. The more you pick, the more in-depth your vote is going to be tabulated. But that is how that works, and that is the system. If you have any comments or questions, as usual, just get a hold of me, and like I said, if you need a link to the Voot, just message me in private, or, sorry, don't message me in private, but get me a message, and I will message you in private, and a link to the Voot will be given. That's the big news, the Voot. The fact that the floodgates are open, that'll be open for a couple weeks. It'll be terminating either on the 21st or the 28th, I haven't decided exactly yet. But sometime in February, by the end of February, we're going to go ahead and terminate that vote and decide what's going to be selected for the coming year. Oh, and by the way, if anybody's curious, Lore's choice this year is the Pixar blog. Who gets to vote? People who have put money into the show recently. You do have to be a current subber, or have recently donated, or have recently donated, or have recently donated, or have recently donated via direct donations, bits, Stripe, or Patreon, respectively, in order to qualify as being someone who gets to vote for next year's movies. That's it. Alright, so, some random news. Total War Warhammer 3 was announced. I know almost nothing about it. I tried to get some time to watch it, but honestly, all I could see was FN Craig, who just covered my screen. It was nothing but FN Craig as far as the eye can see. And it was terrifying, really, because he was donating for Hollow Knight, which is acceptable, I suppose, because a lot of people like that game. So thank you very, very much for that donation. And I will put that towards Hollow Knight. Chaos, I guess, is going to be a thing. I don't even know how Chaos works in Warhammer Fantasy, so I know nothing about that. I do know it's going to be very chaosy, and I know Khorne is going to be there, and they've got certain stuff, but the one and only question I really care about, to my knowledge, hasn't been answered, which is what they're doing with the strategic layer, which was, in my opinion, the biggest flaw of Total War Warhammer 2. Shrug. Next little bit of minor news is that Warner Brothers has successfully patented the Nemesis system, which is something that they've been trying to do for 5 years now, by the way. 5 years they've been trying to patent the Nemesis system. This is stupid for various reasons, but honestly I can't go into why without going into another massive rant about copyright, patenting, and how dumb the whole system is. So all I'm going to say is that this may or may not be a bad thing. After all, for those of you not aware, Microsoft has a patent on, hang on, what's it exactly? I wrote it down here. Style points as a thing that you can have in a video game since, like, the early aughts, and they haven't enforced that patent since the early aughts. So we'll see if Warner Brothers decides to be worse than Microsoft. After all, Warner Brothers is worse than Microsoft. Next point. And I'm just kind of racing through these, by the way, because we are really behind on things. Oh yeah, hang on, I need to whisper Mortal a link to the vote. Give me 1 second. And by Mortal, I mean Mike Romano. Your names both start with M. What do you want from me? Y'all look the same. There you go, Mike Romano. Very easily, Mortal. First you have to apply for a patent, and then you have to succeed at applying, and then you're good. So Final Fantasy XIV has finally decided to add Star Destroyers to it, which is awesome. So they announced the new expansion, which is coming out late this year, the end of this year. We're going to the moon. Cool. There's going to be a new healer job, which looks bizarre and weird, and absolutely not what I would pick, but of course we'll see how it plays. It is apparently a variant on Scholar playstyle, so we will see based on that. Pandemonium looks straight out of FF9. Garlemald is burning. We're going to the moon. I already mentioned that. There's going to be some FF4 theming, and they're going to have something called Island Sanctuary, which, according to several interviews, is, based on my analysis, is something that is trying to be aggressively solo-centric, which sounds just like the main story quest, so that makes sense. I don't actually have anything else to say about the expansion news, so there we are. There is going to be another DPS class added later. There's going to be more news, I believe, in May for that one, when they do their next big announcement. There was supposed to be an announcement that was not this one, but, you know, COVID and I forget which specific convention was canceled where they were going to announce it. But one of the conventions was going to be canceled, or it was canceled, and that's where they're going to announce it, so here we are. They also decided to get rid of belt slots, which was probably a good idea. I wish they would give us the extra room for BPs and legs, personally, instead of weapons, but that's just me. Thank you very, very much, Danielle. Ever knows. If you know where you want to put that, please let me know. Oh yeah, and they're also following WoW for the exact same reason WoW has done this. WoW has done 2 stat squishes over its career, thanks in no small part to the nature of how an MMO functions over a long period of time. So FF14 has now caught up to the first stat squish, which actually is about right if you look at the timeline. Moving on. Next we have Mass Effect Legendary Edition, which, believe it or not, I have very little to talk about as well. I'm afraid not, Imperial Star Destroyer. You're simply too evil, horrible, and insane to qualify for a link. There you go. Hey, Javin. Mass Effect Legendary. Graphics upscaling. Cool. Lens flaring. Not cool. Mako handling changes. We'll have to see that live. HUDs being updated in Mass Effect 1. My text is not formatting for some reason. They're adding more cover combat to 1. They're changing the AI in 1. They're rebalancing the weapons in 1. They're changing the camera angles in 1. They're redoing the overworlds in 1. They're redoing the sound design in 1. They've gotten rid of Pinnacle because they can't do it. There's no Mass Effect 3 multiplayer because... And that's my list there. And that's kind of it. As weird as it may sound, I will frankly say we still don't have much in the way of worthwhile news with regards to the Legendary Edition. Now, I do want to talk about one thing. It is the only thing I have to talk about with regards to that, and that's the ejecting the Mass Effect 3 multiplayer. Now, let me go ahead and start by saying, what is wrong with you people? And then punch them in the face. Okay. Now that we've gotten the face punching out of the way, we'll put that towards Bloodborne. Thank you again, Danielle Peakerpound, very much. Sorry, I'm kind of racing through this because I'm pulling a double shift today. In addition to my usual 4 streams, I'm adding a 5th stream, so, you know, that sucks. I almost banned Zlartek instead of whispering Zlartek. It does... I actually disagree with that one, Blow of Alex, forgive me. I had so much fun at the Mass Effect 3 multiplayer with my friends. I even did it for the lore run. It does... I don't want to say it makes sense that they're doing it, but at the same time I can understand why they're doing it. And allow me to explain very succinctly. Cyberpunk. Now let me clarify what I mean by that. One of the many things that Cyberpunk did not do was they didn't do management. Remember I talked about this actual management where they needed to go ahead and do, you know, let's allocate this time and this money to these resources to this project and work on these things. Instead they just kind of did whatever and it turned out terribly. Not that the game turned out terribly. The game was fine. It's just it had very, very severe issues as a consequence of mismanagement, which sounds familiar because that's kind of their modus operandi. It sounds like with Mass Effect 3, they have decided to go ahead and eject the multiplayer as a consequence of management. That's actually what they said in the interview is, you know, that's going to take time and effort and resources that we don't want to allocate to that, so we're not going to. So I feel bad about complaining about something that I am fully in favor of, but I do have to wonder if they're putting the time and effort and resources that they are into this, and apparently have been for however many years, I'm almost curious why they've decided not to allocate for that one as well. It's a strange choice is all I'm trying to say. Especially since amongst Mass Effect fans, Mass Effect 3's multiplayer was considered a highlight. In fact, it was so much considered a highlight, it was something that they were specifically asked in the interviews. They were specifically asked about why it was being ejected, which really says all I think it needs to. Regardless, it does make a degree of sense that they would try to eject it. After all, not everyone... I mean, they can't just use Steam servers or something. That would be insanity. And direct connecting to peers? Don't be ridiculous. Regardless, we will see what comes of Mass Effect Legendary when it gets here. When it comes to reviewing the Mass Effect trilogy, which will probably happen next year, we'll have plenty of time to judge whether or not we'll be reviewing the originals or the Legendaries, because by then Legendary will long have since been out. So, ooh. So for those of you who ask that question constantly, the answer is I have no idea, because I don't have the information to judge it with. After all, there are plenty of remasters that are crap, or actively worse than the original. And this is a remaster. This is not a remake by every piece of information they've given us. So we'll see. That's it for Loreweek. Quick one, but the big news was the Floodgates.